The galaxy was ancient, and its maps were older still. Generations of explorers had charted every trade route, every nebula, every habitable world worth settling. Empires had risen and fallen, borders had shifted, and countless civilizations had recorded their claims in the stars. Yet for all the knowledge carved into navigational charts, there was always one place where the ink stopped: human space. It was not marked with warnings, nor surrounded by fleets demanding others keep away. It simply ended. The star maps of dozens of species all showed the same blank divide, an invisible frontier where the known galaxy refused to extend. Beyond it, no one traveled. Beyond it, no one returned. The silence around this fact was almost louder than words. Entire civilizations built trade networks along the edge of human space, but none crossed into it. Captains spoke of shortcuts that could save months of travel if only one dared cut through the forbidden region. Yet no captain ever did. In cantinas, explorers told half-serious tales of ships that had entered, never to be seen again. Some said humanity had constructed weapons that erased intruders without warning. Others claimed that no weapons were needed, that simply stepping into their territory was enough to guarantee disappearance. To most, the mystery was a shadow at the edge of their vision, unsettling but easily ignored. But to Professor Velar, it was the unanswered question that had haunted his career. Velar was not a soldier, nor a pilot, nor a diplomat. He was a historian. On his homeworld of Thalreen, he had spent years gathering records of past expeditions, trading for old star logs and reviewing council archives that few cared to open. The patterns disturbed him. Entire fleets had once tested the human border, fleets sent not by smugglers or thrill-seekers, but by powerful empires determined to prove there was no threat. None had returned. Not one message, not one scrap of wreckage, nothing but silence. When Velar presented his findings to the academic council, he was met with polite dismissal. His colleagues told him that mysteries were plentiful in the galaxy and that humanity's silence was simply cultural. Perhaps they were isolationists. Perhaps they had traditions others did not understand. That should have been enough. But it was not enough for Velar. History was built not on silence, but on truth. And the truth behind the human border was a blank page that mocked every historian who passed it by. Alone in his study, Velar replayed the ancient records. He listened to the voices of explorers as they described the shimmering stars of the border before their transmissions cut abruptly into static. He studied council reports that documented the loss of vessels as if they had slipped into another universe. Each vanished ship was a puzzle piece, and together they built a picture that chilled him. Humanity did not expand as others did. Humanity did not trade openly or boast of its fleets. Humanity simply waited at the edge. One night, as the city of Thalreen settled into darkness, Velar stood at his window and gazed at the stars. He made his choice. He would not be satisfied with theories and rumors. If the galaxy feared. To ask why, then he would ask in person. It took months of preparation. Velar gathered a small crew of wanderers, beings with no ties strong enough to hold them back. Some were eager for the thrill, others for the chance of profit, but most were simply restless souls willing to follow where curiosity led. They acquired a modest vessel, equipped it with long-range supplies, and plotted a course that every chart warned against. As the engines roared and the stars stretched into lines of light, Velar felt both fear and exhilaration. The border was near. The question of his life was about to be answered. Somewhere beyond those silent stars lay the truth about humanity, and he would be the first to see it. What he did not know, what no one in the galaxy knew, was that the Yosia silence was not ignorance. It was protection. And crossing that invisible line would demand a price he had never imagined. The vessel seeker's path cut through the void, a modest craft compared to the warships and freighters that traveled the main routes of the galaxy. Its hull bore the marks of previous owners, patched plates and mismatched systems, but it was reliable enough to carry its crew into the unknown. Professor Velar stood near the bridge viewport, his eyes fixed on the growing shimmer that marked the border of human space. At first, there was nothing unusual about the stars ahead. They burned as all stars did, scattered across the black canvas of space. But as the Seeker's path drifted closer, subtle distortions rippled through their light. Constellations bent and warped, as though seen through water. The crew murmured, uneasily. "Gravity fluxes," said Raish, the pilot, adjusting the controls with a steady clawed hand. "But they don't follow natural patterns. It feels directed." Velar recorded every reading, his tendrils trembling with excitement. "Magnificent. Do you not see? This is proof that humanity has engineered some kind of border technology. No other species has mastered manipulation on this scale." Another crew member, a tall insectoid named Thrix, clicked his mandibles in. "Warning. Borders enforced by anomalies are not welcoming signs. We should turn back before our ship tears apart." But Velar's eyes gleamed. "This is history. Do you wish to return to your old lives, knowing you fled from discovery? Humanity's secret lies ahead. We will not retreat." The argument did not last long, for the ship made the decision for them. Sensors sputtered and failed, lights flickered. A deep vibration shuddered through the hull like the echo of a distant storm. Then, as suddenly as it began, the disturbance stilled. The bridge fell silent. A single vessel now drifted before them. It was not a grand battleship, nor an intimidating dreadnought. The human craft was small, perhaps only half the size of their own, its hull scarred by time and patched with armor that bore no symmetry. Its engines burned with a dull glow, steady but unimpressive. And yet, the instant it appeared, the Seeker's Path's crew felt their chests tighten, as if space itself leaned inward toward that single ship. "They were waiting for us," Thrix whispered. A voice crackled through the comms, calm and clear. "Unidentified vessel. You have crossed into human space. Identify yourselves and state your purpose." The words were spoken in Galactic standard, flawless and precise. Velar stepped forward, his voice steady despite the racing of his hearts. "This is Professor Velar of Thalreen. We come seeking knowledge, nothing more. I am a historian. I wish to understand why the galaxy fears to cross this border." There was a pause. Then the view screen flickered, revealing a human face. Captain Elena Rhodes appeared younger than Velar expected, with dark hair pulled back and eyes that seemed older than the stars behind her. She studied them for a long moment before speaking. "You are far from home, Professor. Curiosity is not often a safe companion." Her words were calm, but her gaze held something that unsettled the crew more than open threats would have. She looked not only at them, but beyond them, as if listening to a sound none of them could hear. Velar straightened. "Knowledge is never safe, Captain. But it is necessary. I seek answers. The galaxy has questions, and silence will no longer suffice." Elena exhaled slowly, as though weighing his resolve. "You should turn back. Not because we would harm you, but because you do not want to know what we guard. Yet I see that you will not leave empty-handed." The crew shifted uneasily. Raish muttered under his breath, "We should leave while we can. This is not a place for wanderers." But Velar ignored him, his focus fixed on Elena. "If you would allow us entry, we will learn with respect. We do not come as conquerors." Another silence stretched, long enough for doubt to creep into every mind aboard the Seeker's Path. Then Elena nodded once. "Very well. We will escort you deeper into our territory. You will see, though I do not promise you will understand." The human vessel shifted, its engines burning brighter. A beacon lit in the void, guiding them forward. The Seeker's Path followed, its crew trapped between fear and wonder. Velar's hearts raced. The line had been crossed, the mystery of human Space was no longer a whisper at the edge of the map. It was real, it was near, and whatever waited ahead was greater than any story told in the quiet corners of the galaxy. What Velar could not yet see was that the truth would demand more than curiosity. It would demand a price that no historian had ever paid before. The Seeker's path drifted behind the human vessel, its crew tense and silent. The void seemed heavier now, as if the very stars watched them. Velar stood tall at the bridge, forcing calm into his posture, though his heart thundered beneath his chest. He had dreamed of this moment for years, speaking directly to humanity, and now that it was here, the weight of it threatened to crush him. On the view screen, Captain Elena Rhodes remained visible. She had not turned off the connection, and yet she barely looked at them. Her gaze often flicked to the starfield behind her, eyes narrowing slightly, as though she tracked movements the alien crew could not see. Thrix, the insectoid, leaned close to Velar and whispered, his mandibles clicking with unease. "She does not look at us, Professor. She looks at the dark. What does she see out there?" Velar kept his expression firm. "She sees more than we do. That is why we are here, to learn." Elena's voice broke the silence. "Your vessel is unarmed. That spares you. Many who cross this border come with fleets with weapons ready. They never return. Do you wonder why?" "Raish," the pilot muttered under his breath. "Because you destroy them." Elena's eyes shifted, pinning him with a glance sharp as a blade. "We do not destroy those who come. The border itself destroys them." Her words left the crew unsettled. Velar leaned forward. "Then why does your people remain here? Why hold a frontier if it only brings danger?" For the first time, Elena smiled, though it was not a smile of warmth. It was the tired expression of one who carried a burden too long. "Because if we did not hold it, no one would." The bridge of the Seeker's path fell into silence. The meaning of her words was unclear, yet none doubted their weight. Hours passed as they traveled deeper into human space. The distortions at the border faded, replaced by ordinary starlight. Yet the crew remained restless, their thoughts tangled by Elena's warning. In the quiet, Thrix voiced what the others thought. "We should turn back. Professor, this is not discovery. It is a trap. She tells us we should not be here, yet she leads us further. We may never escape." Resh nodded, his claws tapping nervously at the console. "If we flee now, we might outrun them. Better to abandon this quest than lose our lives." Velar shook his head. "We are closer than anyone in history to learning the truth. Do you not understand? The galaxy trembles at a mystery it dares not name. If we leave now, we remain ignorant forever. Knowledge is worth the risk." The others looked at him, some with doubt, some with reluctant respect. Velar knew the truth of their hearts. They had not followed him for glory. They had followed because they had nothing else. But now, when the unknown loomed ahead, their courage frayed. Elena's voice returned, calm but firm. "You argue among yourselves, that is natural. Many who learn pieces of the truth react with fear. Some turn back. Others wish they had." Velar lifted his chin. "And what about you, Captain? Do you regret staying?" For a long moment, Elena said nothing. Then she looked directly at him. Her eyes, though human, seemed older than any star he had studied. "Regret? No, but I wish the burden had fallen to another." The answer struck Velar harder than a denial would have. It was not pride that kept humanity at the border, nor ambition. It was duty, chosen or not. As the two ships glided toward a distant point of light, a human colony, perhaps, Velar felt both awe and dread. His dream was unfolding, yet the shape it took was far darker than he had imagined. When he looked at his crew, he saw the cracks widening. Raish avoided his eyes, already planning retreat. Thrix clutched the railing as if holding on to sanity itself. Even the younger crew members, once eager for adventure, now sat silent, their faces pale with doubt. Velar turned back to the screen. Elena had not spoken further, but her gaze remained fixed on the stars, as if something unseen lurked just beyond the void. And in that moment, Velar realized a truth far more unsettling than any legend. The humans were not watching him. They were watching the dark, and whatever lay within that darkness was the reason no one ever crossed the border. Twice. The Seeker's path followed its human escort deeper into forbidden space. Hours stretched into days, yet the tension on board never eased. The crew barely slept, each of them haunted by the words of Captain Elena Rhodes. They were no longer explorers on a daring voyage. They were trespassers led into a mystery greater than they had ever imagined. Velar spent much of the journey pressed to the viewport, recording every sight. What he saw astonished him. Human space was not empty or lifeless, as the galaxy believed. It was alive with colonies, fleets, and stations. Great orbital rings encircled planets, glittering with cities suspended above the atmosphere. Vast shipyards turned in silent arcs, assembling vessels whose designs were unlike anything Velar had studied. Yet for all the grandeur, there was a chilling uniformity. Every settlement, no matter how prosperous, bore signs of preparation for war. Civilian stations bristled with concealed weaponry. Mining colonies had bunkers carved into their cores. Even agricultural worlds, green and tranquil, were dotted with fortified towers. Humanity thrived, yes, but humanity thrived as if every heartbeat prepared for battle. The crew of the Seeker's Path whispered among themselves. "Do you see?" Raish muttered, his voice hushed as though afraid the humans could hear. "Even their farmers live behind fortresses. This is not natural. This is not peace." Thrix's mandibles clicked nervously. "They are not building to defend against us. Their weapons are not aimed outward but inward, toward the darkness of their own border. What enemy demands this kind of readiness?" Velar scribbled notes furiously, though the weight of their words sank into him as well. No empire, not even the most paranoid, had ever lived this way. This was not expansion. This was survival. Their escort finally guided them toward a world that shimmered against the void. It was not a core world, but a frontier colony, small by comparison, with only a handful of orbital rings. Yet as they approached, Velar's throat tightened. The defenses here were stronger than most capitals in the galaxy. Entire fleets patrolled, the system in tight formations, their ships battered yet vigilant. The Seeker's Path docked at a station orbiting the colony. Human officers met them, silent and composed. No threats were made, no weapons drawn. Instead, they were guided to quarters, treated with professional courtesy, and given freedom to move within restricted areas of the station. Velar, restless with excitement, spent every waking moment observing. He interviewed technicians, watched. Workers maintained ships, and studied the architecture of the station. Everywhere he looked, he saw efficiency and discipline. There were no wasted spaces, no signs of complacency. Even the children he glimpsed in passing corridors carried themselves with a kind of solemn awareness, as if they too understood the weight pressing on their people. At last, unable to contain himself, Velar asked a question during a discussion with one of the station engineers, a woman whose hands were scarred from years of work. "Forgive me," Velar began, "but I must ask, why do you live this way? Why is every colony, every world prepared for war? Who is your enemy?" The engineer's hands stilled. For a moment, she said nothing, her eyes flicking toward the nearest viewport, where the stars stretched beyond sight. When she finally spoke, her voice was low, barely above a whisper. "Not against," she said. "For," Velar frowned. "For what?" The woman looked at him then, her expression weary, her eyes shadowed. She did not answer. Instead, she turned back to her work and spoke no further. That night, Velar dreamed. He dreamed of shadows, pressing at the edge of the universe, pressing until the stars themselves bent beneath their weight. He saw vast shapes clawing against reality, their forms shifting and formless, impossible to describe. He woke with a start, breath trembling, in his chest. Across the room, Captain Elena Rhodes stood by a viewport, her arms crossed, her gaze fixed into the void. She had not noticed his stirring, or if she had, she did not turn. Her eyes remained locked on the darkness beyond the stars. Velar swallowed, his notes forgotten. He had crossed into human space seeking answers, but with each step forward, the questions only deepened. Humanity did not prepare for war as others did. Humanity prepared for something else, something larger, something beyond comprehension. And for the first time, Velar wondered if his quest for truth had gone too far. The days that followed were a blur of controlled observation. The humans did not confine Velar and his crew, nor did they interrogate them. Instead, they allowed them to walk the station under supervision, as if daring them to see the truth with their own eyes. Everywhere, Velar found more questions than answers. He saw patrols of soldiers moving through the halls with precision, their uniforms simple but marked with quiet discipline. He watched crews maintain ships with an urgency that suggested constant readiness. He even noted how civilians lived their lives with an underlying awareness, like people who always expected the alarm to sound at any moment. It was not the behavior of conquerors, nor the decadence of an empire bloated by power. It was the rhythm of a people standing guard. At last, Velar was summoned to meet Captain Elena Rhodes in a private chamber at the edge of the station. The room was unremarkable, its walls bare, but its wide viewport offered a haunting view of the stars beyond. Elena stood with her back to him, hands clasped behind her, her gaze locked outward. "You are persistent, Professor," she said without turning. "Most who cross the border never see what you have. Do you know why?" Velar's throat tightened. "Because they do not survive?" Elena nodded slightly. "Because they do not listen. They arrive with weapons, arrogance, and ignorance. The border swallows them whole. You are still here because you asked questions instead of firing guns." Velar stepped closer, his voice trembling with both fear and fascination. "Then, answer me. Who do you prepare for? What lies beyond that border that even the bravest fleets cannot return from?" Elena finally turned to face him. Her eyes were calm, but heavy with something far greater than fear. "Beyond human space lies a wound, a breach in the fabric of the universe itself. Something broke there long before your species walked upright, and through that wound, things crawl." Velar felt the room grow colder. "Things?" she nodded. "Not life as you know it, not even matter as you understand it. Entities without form, without beginning or end. They slip between dimensions, pressing against our reality like a hand against thin glass. When they succeed in breaking through, they do not conquer. They erase." Velar's mind reeled. "And you stand against them?" "Yes." Elena's voice was steady. "Humanity discovered the breach by accident long ago. Others had stumbled upon it before us, empires greater than any alive today. None survived. Their names are forgotten because nothing was left to remember them. We endured, barely. And from that day onward, we chose to remain here, to build walls, to hold the line." Velar staggered back, his thoughts a storm. "This is why you do not expand. Why you do not trade freely. Why your maps end where they do." "Exactly," Elena said. "We cannot abandon the breach. If we falter, it spreads. If it spreads, the galaxy falls." For a long moment, Velar was silent. He turned to the viewport, staring into the darkness. It seemed to watch him back. "And the others?" he asked quietly. "Why not tell the Council? Why not warn the galaxy?" Elena's expression hardened. Because they cannot face it. Knowledge of the breach is not wisdom. It is poison. Entire species would collapse under the weight of it. Fear would tear apart governments before the first shadow crossed their skies. The galaxy survives because it does not know. And it survives because we remain here, unseen, unthanked, unbroken. Velar's hearts pounded. His historian's soul ached to record every word, to shout the truth across the stars. But another part of him, a deeper instinct, whispered of madness and ruin if the knowledge spread unchecked. Behind him, the door hissed open, and Thrix entered, his mandibles tight with unease. "Professor, we should leave. This is no place for us." But Velar could not move. He looked at Elena and saw not a soldier, not even a captain, but a sentinel who had given her life to a war no one else would ever acknowledge. The galaxy feared humanity, he realized, not because humans were dangerous. They feared humanity because humanity alone dared to face what waited in the dark. And for the first time, Velar felt the weight of that fear settle on his shoulders. The revelations haunted Velar long after he left the chamber. He returned to his quarters carrying notes and recordings, yet every word Elena Rhodes had spoken weighed more heavily than ink or sound. He replayed her voice in his mind. "We remain here, unseen, unthanked, unbroken." Sleep refused to claim him. When he did close his eyes, dreams of the breach returned. Shadows clawing at reality, shapes that did not belong in any world of science or reason. He woke with his throat raw from silent screams. The crew noticed his unrest, and their own anxieties grew sharper. In the mess hall, Thrix confronted him with barely contained anger. "You heard their tale, Professor. You saw their fortresses. You know the truth now. So what will you do with it? Tell the Council? Tell the galaxy? If you do, every empire will collapse in panic before a single shadow stirs. And if you don't," he clicked his mandibles, "then we remain silent accomplices in a secret that swallows lives." Velar tried to steady his breathing. Knowledge must not be buried. History must not be forgotten. If humanity truly guards this breach, then the galaxy deserves to know who shields them. Raish slammed a claw against the table, startling the others. "And when your revelation drives worlds into chaos, when panic spreads and governments collapse, you are a historian, not a savior. You cannot decide the fate of the galaxy with a single speech." Velar faltered. They were right. His calling had always been truth. But this truth was heavier than anything he had uncovered before. Could the galaxy endure it? Could even he endure it? Later, as silence returned to the corridors, Velar wandered the station alone. He passed. Families sharing meals, workers repairing hulls, soldiers drilling with quiet precision. None of them looked fearful. They did not hide from the burden of their lives. They bore it with quiet strength. Humanity lived not in despair, but in constant readiness, as though existence itself was an act of defiance. Elena found him standing at a viewport again, his hands pressed against the glass. She joined him in silence for a time, her gaze, as always, fixed on the stars. "You struggle with what you have learned," she said at last. Velar nodded. "Every part of me longs to speak it aloud, to share the truth, to record it for history. Yet I know that knowledge itself might destroy the very civilizations it seeks to enlighten." Elena studied him carefully. "That is the choice you must make. Some truths protect when hidden. Some burdens are not meant to be shared." Velar turned to her, desperation in his voice. "And you? Do you never wish to tell the galaxy? To be recognized for the sacrifice your people make?" Her expression softened, though her eyes remained weary. "Recognition does not stop the breach. Praise does not hold the line. We stand because we must, not because anyone thanks us. If the galaxy fears us, good. Fear keeps them away. Fear spares them from seeing what would unmake them. Her words struck like iron. Humanity did not endure for glory. They endured for survival. Everyone's survival. When Velar returned to his crew, he found them divided. Raish and two others had already packed what little they carried, determined to leave at the first chance. Thrix, however, lingered with uncertainty, his sharp eyes meeting Velar's. "I saw the breach in your dreams," Thrix said quietly. "I felt it through you. Perhaps the humans are right. Perhaps silence is safer. But a part of me wonders if joining them is better still, to fight rather than hide." Velar's hearts twisted. Each path pulled him in a different direction, truth, silence, or sacrifice. Yet the choice loomed ever closer. The humans would soon escort them back to the border. When they crossed, he would decide whether to speak or to remain silent forever. That night, he lay awake staring at the ceiling of his quarters. His historian's soul screamed for truth. But for the first time, he began to understand that truth could destroy more than ignorance ever could. And so, as the stars wheeled past the viewport, Professor Velar prepared himself. A choice awaited at the border, one that would shape not only his destiny, but perhaps the destiny of every world that spun beneath the galaxy's endless sky. The day of departure came sooner than Velar expected. The humans escorted him and his crew to their vessel, every step echoing with finality. Soldiers stood at quiet attention along the hangar walls, their gazes sharp, their movements efficient. Not a single one offered a farewell. They simply watched. Captain Elena Rhodes walked with them to the boarding ramp. Her expression was calm, but her voice carried weight. "You will be escorted to the border. Beyond that, your choices are your own. But remember this, some knowledge is a wound that does not heal. Whatever you decide to carry back with you, make sure it does not consume the ones who hear it." Velar bowed slightly, though the gesture felt insufficient for what she had given him. "I do not know what I will do, Captain, but I will not forget what I have seen." Elena's eyes lingered on him for a long moment. Then she nodded once. "That is all I can ask." The crew filed aboard in silence. Engines rumbled, hangar doors opened, and the ship lifted into the dark void. Velar remained at the viewport, staring at the human station as it grew smaller against the stars. For a fleeting instant, he felt the strange comfort of leaving behind a secret too heavy to bear. But as they approached the border, that comfort dissolved. The border was not a line, not truly. It was a scar across the heavens, a place where space itself seemed frayed. Velar had crossed it before, entering human space without incident. Now, however, he saw what he had missed. The stars beyond the border did not shimmer as they should. They bent and wavered, as if seen through heat rising from desert sands. Shadows flickered where no light should exist. And then came the pressure. It was not sound, nor light, nor anything measurable, yet every mind aboard felt it. A weight pressed into their thoughts, not from outside, but from within, as though reality itself strained against their skulls. Raish clutched the console, his claws trembling. "What is this? What is happening?" Thrix hissed low, his mandibles clicking in agitation. "The breach! We're too close! Velar's!" Hearts pounded. Elena's words came back to him. Entities without form, pressing against our reality like a hand against thin glass. And then, as if answering the thought, the glass cracked. A ripple spread across the void, darker than dark. A distortion that swallowed starlight. Shapes emerged. Shapes that were not shapes, angles that could not exist, silhouettes that shifted faster than thought could name them. The crew recoiled as their minds struggled to comprehend. One of the younger crew screamed, clutching his head. His eyes rolled back, and blood trickled from his nose. Velar grabbed him, but the boy's body convulsed, trembling against something no hand could fight. "Turn us back!" Raish shouted. "Back into human space now!" Thrix wrestled with the controls, his mandibles tight with fear. "They're pulling at us, distorting navigation. It's like space itself refuses to let us go." Velar stared at the void, horror clawing into his thoughts. Yet even through the terror, he realized something. This was why humanity did not leave. This was why their ships patrolled, why their soldiers drilled endlessly. They were not defending a border. They were standing at the edge of oblivion. The ship shuddered violently, alarms shrieking. The void beings pressed closer, stretching across dimensions like shadows of giants. And then, beams of light slashed the darkness. Human ships. A squadron burst from the border, sleek vessels firing volleys of energy into the distortion. The void beings recoiled, their shapes unraveling, though not destroyed. The human ships moved with practiced precision, forming a barrier between the breach and Velar's crippled vessel. A voice crackled through comms, sharp and commanding. "Foreign vessel, hold your position. We will escort you across." Velar's breath caught. Humanity had followed them, or perhaps they had been watching all along, never allowing any ship to cross without their shadow close behind. The distortion twisted and seethed, but slowly, painfully, the ship was pulled back across the scar. The pressure lifted, the void receded, and the stars returned to their rightful places. Silence hung over the cabin, broken only by ragged breaths. One crew member lay unconscious, another wept openly. Even Raish's bravado had dissolved into quiet trembling. Velar pressed a hand against the viewport, staring into the darkness they had escaped. He understood now, with no doubt. Humanity's vigil was not exaggeration, nor myth, nor fear. It was survival. The breach was real, and it hungered, and humanity alone stood in its way. The ship drifted in silence after the human escort pulled them safely across the border. Systems stabilized, alarms went quiet, and the distortion behind them collapsed into the darkness of space. Yet the weight of what the crew had seen did not fade. Velar sat in the command chair, staring at nothing. His thoughts raced, replaying the impossible shapes, the crushing pressure, the raw terror that had invaded their minds. The breach was not theory, not myth, but truth. A truth so vast that even thinking of it too long scraped at the edges of sanity. Raish broke the silence first, his voice hoarse. "We cannot tell anyone. Do you hear me? If the galaxy learns of this—" He trailed off, shuddering. Thrix's mandibles clicked nervously. "They will not understand. They will not prepare. They will only prod and pry until something breaks. And then those things will come through." Velar finally turned to face them. "All my life I sought the answer. All my life I demanded to know why humanity stood apart, why their borders were untouched. I believed silence was arrogance, or secrecy, or pride. But now," his voice trembled, "now I see it was mercy." No one spoke for a long moment. The crew's eyes reflected exhaustion, grief, and something deeper, fear of the knowledge itself. They were not explorers anymore. They were survivors. The comms crackled. Captain Elena's voice came through, steady and commanding. "You have seen what no outsider should ever witness. Consider carefully what you will carry back to your people." Velar hesitated, then answered softly, "Do you expect me to lie?" "No," Elena said. "We expect you to choose. The truth can be a weapon, or it can be a shield, but it cannot be both." The transmission ended, leaving the words echoing in his mind. When they finally reached Thalreen, the council summoned Velar immediately. The chamber was crowded with scholars, ministers, and military officials, all eager for answers. Murmurs filled the air as Velar stepped forward, his clothes still travel-worn, his eyes shadowed with the weight of what he had seen. "Professor Velar," the High Counselor said, his voice sharp with expectation, "you have crossed the border, spoken with the humans, and returned. Tell us, what lies within human space? Why do they remain apart?" Dozens of eyes fixed on him. His crew shifted uneasily at his back, each one silently pleading for him to choose carefully. Velar closed his eyes for a moment. He thought of the boy who had screamed under the weight of the breach, the way the stars themselves had twisted, the inhuman shapes clawing at reality. He thought of humanity's endless watch, their silent fleets holding back the dark. When he opened his eyes, he spoke slowly. "What lies beyond their border is not ours to disturb. Humanity keeps to itself because it must, to protect not only themselves but all of us." The counselors leaned forward. "Protect us from what?" Velar paused. He felt the answer rise in his throat, the raw truth, the horror he had witnessed. But he also saw the hunger in their eyes, the reckless curiosity that had driven him once. If he gave them the truth, they would demand more. They would send fleets, probes, expeditions, and in their arrogance, they would invite the breach to spread. So he shook his head. "That question has no answer you can bear. Trust only this. Without humanity, none of us would see another dawn. Their silence is not secrecy. It is sacrifice." The chamber erupted with murmurs, some of disbelief, others of fear. The council pressed him for details, but Velar remained firm. He gave them only warnings, not revelations. He turned their hunger into unease, their curiosity into caution. That night, alone in his quarters, Velar stood at the window, gazing at the stars. He felt older, heavier, as though the knowledge itself had carved years into his bones. Perhaps he had betrayed the historian's calling by leaving the record incomplete. But sometimes history's duty was not to expose, but to preserve. Far, across the galaxy, beyond the maps, humanity kept its silent vigil. No monument would mark their sacrifice. No songs would honor their endless watch. But Velar knew, and now he understood why no one dared cross the border. Some truths were not meant to be shared. Some truths were meant only to be carried, quietly, by those who had seen and survived. And so the galaxy slept in ignorance, safe beneath the shield of human silence.